Dear friends, it is said that a mind that is well trained can bring a lot of happiness. And a mind that is not trained, that's not cultivated, can bring a lot of suffering. So meditation is a way of training the mind. Nothing can bring as much as suffering as an untrained mind. And nothing can bring as much as happiness as a trained mind. Before I left for India, 10 days before I left for India, I received a letter from a young man who lives in a prison in America. He is 33. He has spent 17 years in prison. And he hoped that in 7 years more he will be released from prison. When he was 16, he killed two other young men because of anger. A 16-year-old young man killing two other young men and got into prison. And he has lived in prison 17 years. In his letter, he said that someone had sent him a few books of mine, The Miracle of Mindfulness, Be in Peace. And he said that in prison he has read each book at least 50 times, 50 times. It seems that he found a lot of relief and suffer much less while reading these two books on meditation. And he tried to apply the teaching in these books into his daily life. He's much happier in prison. Life in prison become livable to him. And he expressed his gratitude to the author of the book. But he still has a question. Dear Thầy, the only problem that remains with me is when I am confronted in a situation of a person who is trying to attack me. How can I deal with that situation? Someone is trying to attack me. Defending myself is not a problem. But I feel rage, anger, when someone is trying to attack me. So what should I do in order not to be possessed by that kind of rage, anger, while someone is trying to attack me? Because I'm good enough to defend myself. One day after receiving the letter, I had to go to Germany and spend 5 days there. I did not have the time to write him an answer. I thought I should write to him and give him the answer. And then when I got back to France, I had to prepare in order to go to India. And yet his letter was still in my mind. I said that I have to answer that letter before I go off to India. So I sat down and wrote that letter to him, sent it to his prison. I said that you want to, when you defend yourself from an attack, you can stay alive because you know how to defend, how to keep being alive. But you are affected by the rage, the energy of anger that is overwhelming you when you are confronted with a situation. Now your training is to defend yourself in such a way that you can help defend him or her also, the one who attacked you. Because that person is in danger. He or she is about to kill another person and get into hell. So if you can defend yourself in such a way that you can defend him from committing the crime, because and from being possessed by the anger in him or in her, because the man who is attacking you is also possessed by anger, and when you are being attacked, you are also possessed by anger. So both of you are in a dangerous situation. To die is one thing, but to die in anger is another thing. And the only way is to get the insight that the other person, the person who is trying to attack you, to kill you, that person has a lot of suffering in him or in her. That person has a lot of violence, a lot of anger, maybe a lot of fear. And he is victim of these kind of energies. He does not know how to handle these energies of fear, anger, and violence. And he suffers very much. And he's trying to suffer less by attacking another person. And this has to have something to do with terrorism. So if you practice in such a way that at that time, when you want to defend yourself, you see the other person also as a victim. He's a victim also of his anger, his fear, his violence, and his wrong perceptions. And you are young, and you have the capacity to think with lucidity. Practice right thinking, so that you can see that you are the victim of that energy of anger, violence. But he, the attacker, is also at the same time victims of that energy of fear, of anger, of violence. Defend yourself in such a way that you can save two people at the same time. And if you can train yourself, you would know how to defend yourself without doing harm to him and without being overwhelmed by anger, by rage. But the most crucial thing is that you can see the suffering in the other person, that he is a victim. And if you have that kind of insight, and then you are protected by the energy of compassion. The energy of compassion can be very powerful also. And if you are protected by the energy of compassion, you are safe. You can defend yourself, but at the same time, you help him. You help the offender, the attacker. And this needs some training. You have to train your mind in order when the situation comes, you are able to see the suffering in him, in the attacker, and that he is also a victim. Our mind has tendencies, habits that drive us to do or to say things that we don't want to do, don't want to say. We know very well that saying such a thing will bring unhappiness to us and to the other person. We are intelligent enough to know that saying such a thing is not good. It can ruin our relationship. And yet when the situation presents itself, you still say it. And after you have said that, you regret. You beat your chest, you pull your hair, you said, I already knew that I should not say something like that, but why did I say it? And you say, well, it's stronger than me. What is stronger than me? My habit of thinking, my habit of acting. I know very well that I should not do something like that. Doing something like that is ruining our relationship. And yet when the situation comes, I cannot resist. I still go ahead and do it in order to regret later. And that is called the habit energy. And every one of us has the habit energy in us. And we say that our habit energy is stronger than us. In my tradition, if you know how to practice mindful breathing, mindful walking, your mindfulness is powerful enough to recognize the moment when your habit energy begins to come up. You are about to react in the old way. You have patterns of behavior. You have patterns of thinking and of reacting. And you are like a machine. When you are provoked in that way, you will react exactly like that. Unless you have a way of changing your mind, training your mind. So if you have some mindfulness in you, and this can be cultivated by the daily practice of mindful breathing, mindful walking, mindful cooking, mindful driving. And then mindfulness, which is a kind of energy that helps you to be aware of what is going on, what is happening. And when the energy of habit, the habit energy begins to show, to manifest, you know it is coming up. And you breathe in and you say, breathing in, I know my habit energy begin to manifest. And breathing out, I smile to my habit energy. You don't try to suppress, you don't try to fight your habit energy, you just recognize it. And recognizing the habit energy will prevent it from overwhelming you and pushing you to do or to say things that you don't want to do, you don't want to say. And if your mindfulness is still weak, you may need another person, a fellow practitioner that can remind you. Suppose someone who always reacted with violence and say strong things in a meeting every time he heard the same kind of things. He always reacted in the same way. Now another friend of his said, well, I will come with you in a meeting. I will sit next to you. And when the situation becomes critical, someone is saying something that can touch off the energy of anger in you, the habit energy in you, I will squeeze your hand. And at that time, you feel I'm squeezing your hand, you go back to your breathing in and out. You say that my habit energy is coming, I should not react like I react before. And then that day, he succeeds not to react the same, because there is someone helping him, helping her to react differently because of the intervention of a new energy called mindfulness. So mindfulness is the kind of energy that allows us to know what is going on. And when you breathe in, you know that you are breathing in, that is called mindfulness of breathing. When you are drinking your tea, and if you know that you are drinking your tea, that is called mindfulness of drinking. And when you walk, and if you are aware of every step you make, that's mindfulness of walking. And you can practice mindfulness of driving, of cooking, of watering the vegetable garden. You can practice mindfulness in every moment of your daily life. You don't have to go to a practice center or a monastery in order to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is the basic practice of meditation. Mindfulness is to bring, the practice of mindfulness is the practice of bringing your mind home to your body. And when the mind is with the body, you are fully present in the present moment, in the here and the now. You are fully alive. In our daily life, our body may be there, but our mind is elsewhere. Our mind might be caught in our sorrow, our regret concerning the past. And we are like being locked in the prison of the past. We are not free in order to live our life in the present moment. And there are those of us who are like that, always being locked in the prison of the past. We cannot live in the present moment. In the present moment, there are wonderful things to be in touch with, like the blue sky, the beautiful hills, the clear river, the lovely face of children. All these wonderful things are available only in the present moment. And if you are locked into the past, you miss all these things. There is a beautiful sunset, but it's not for you because you are locked in the past. Or there are those of us who think too much about the future, who believe that happiness is not possible in the present moment. And many of us are like that. We believe that we need a few more conditions to be truly happy. And these conditions we have to go and look in the future. That is why we sacrifice the present for the sake of the future. And that is why the beautiful sunset is not for us. The blue sky is not for us. And the lovely faces of our children is not for us. And many of us are anxious, fearful about the future. And the future becomes a kind of prison also. We are locked into the prison of the future, and we are not available in the here and the now in order to get in touch with the wonders of life. Life is available only in the present moment. And you have an appointment with life that takes place in the present moment. And if you miss the present moment, you miss your appointment with life, which is very serious. So the practice of mindfulness, especially the practice of mindful breathing, mindful walking, bring your mind back to your body. And you are established in the here and the now in order to touch the wonders of life for your nourishment and for your healing. So mindfulness is the kind of energy that can help us to be back in the present moment so that we can be fully present there and be fully alive. we are not alive when our mind and our body are not together. And as we are present, we are aware of what is happening in the present moment, in our body, in our feelings, in our emotions, in our thinking, and what is happening around us in that very moment, so that we can handle these things. So the habit energy is also to go back to the past. It prevents us to live our life in the present moment. The habit energy is to always run to the future, to be caught in our projects, in our fear, our uncertainty concerning the future. And that way, we cannot be in the present moment in order to live each moment of the present moment of our daily life deeply. And then the energy of mindfulness, as we know, will tell us that the energy of habit, that habit energy that has pushed us to do or to say things that can bring suffering is coming up, so that we can practice mindful breathing, mindful walking, and recognize that habit energy in us. The practice is not to fight against that energy, just to recognize it. I remember a young American man who came to the upper hamlet of Plum Village to practice with us. And in the first 3 weeks, he was so happy because he lived in the upper hamlet with the brothers, the monastic brothers, together with the other laymen. He was able to live in the present moment because surrounding him are practitioners who know how to live in the present moment. So he was supported by that kind of collective energy. So he spent his first 3 weeks with happiness, using the collective energy in order to really live his life. And one day, the brothers asked him to go to the market and to do some shopping. Because we was celebrating Thanksgiving. So each group of nationalities will cook a dish, traditional national dish, to offer on the altar of ancestors. So the group of Dutch people offer a Dutch dish. The American group will offer an American dish. So he was commissioned by the American group to go to do some shopping. And that was the first time when he went to the marketplace alone, and not surrounded by other practitioners. So during the time of shopping, he suddenly realized that he got into the habit energy of hurrying. Suddenly he found herself trying to finish things very quickly to go home. And that is new because during the 3 weeks of being in the upper hamlet, he always do things slowly, mindfully with the brothers, with the monastics. But now he is alone. He is not supported by that kind of collective energy. That's why he found himself in a hurry. He tried to do things quickly to finish with. But because he had already practiced 3 weeks of mindfulness, his mindfulness is good enough to tell him that he was being carried away by that habit energy. And he realized that this energy had been transmitted to him by his mother, because his mother is always like that, always in a hurry. And he saw that he has that energy, habit energy, transmitted to him by his mother. So with that, he breathed in and he said, "Hello, mother, I know you are there in me." And suddenly the habit energy stopped. And he can do things slowly, mindfully, and finish his shopping and go home. You don't have to fight against that energy. You have to recognize it only. And it will have no power on you anymore. And that is one way of training our mind. Using mindfulness in order to recognize what is going on in you, in your body, in your feelings, in your emotions. So when you get angry, there is a practice called mindfulness of anger. You have a seed of anger in you that is sleeping in you. You are not angry because that seed of anger is sleeping in you. You are safe. But if someone come and say something, does something, or if you hear something and read something that will touch the seed of anger, and the seed of anger will manifest up to become an energy of anger. And that is why it's very helpful not to allow the seed of anger in you to be touched, to be watered too often. When we watch television, when we read the news, when we have a conversation, what we hear, what we read, what we see can touch the seed of anger in us, the seed of violence in us, and make it manifest on the upper level of our consciousness. In Buddhist psychology, we speak of consciousness as store consciousness and mind consciousness, at least 2 layers. The lower layer is called store, alaya vijnana. And store consciousness preserve all kinds of seeds. You have the seed of fear, of anger, of jealousy, of despair, of discrimination. But you also have the seed of joy, of compassion, of peace, of happiness. So there are 51 categories of seeds in your store consciousness. And every time one of these seeds touch, it manifests in the upper level of your consciousness called mind consciousness, mano vijnana. And when it manifests on the upper level of consciousness, you suffer if it is an unwholesome seed. Store consciousness is like the basement of our house. And mind consciousness is like the living room. Anything you don't like, you dump into the basement. And then the seed of anger, of sorrow, of fear, of despair, you don't want them to manifest, to go into your living room. It's not pleasant. So our strategy is to occupy the living room. So there is no place for the seed of anger, fear, sorrow to come up. And that is the policy of most of us. We try to pick up a book to read. We try to turn on the television to watch. We try to do anything in order to fill up the living room, the mind consciousness, so that the things down there don't have a chance to come up. We are trying to run away from our suffering. We are trying to cover up the things we don't like. But when the seed of anger, of fear, is water, is touched off by someone, it will manifest anyway. And we suffer. And with a person who knows how to train his or her mind, it is very important to touch the seed of mindfulness and invite the seed of mindfulness to manifest at the same time. The first energy that comes up is the energy of anger. The second energy you invite to manifest is the energy of mindfulness. And mindfulness has the power to recognize the presence of anger. Mindfulness of anger. Breathing in, I know anger has manifested in me. You are in a much safer situation if mindfulness is in you. If anger is the only one that is in you, that's dangerous. But if you know how to generate the energy of mindfulness by the practice of mindful breathing or walking, you have that second energy and you are much safer. Although anger is there, but mindfulness of anger is also there. So mindfulness, the first thing mindfulness will do is to recognize that anger is there. Breathing in, I know anger has manifested in me. Breathing out, I know I have to take very good care of my anger, of myself, and not to allow my anger to push me to do or to say things that will cause damage. And the second function of mindfulness is to embrace tenderly the energy of anger. One energy embracing another energy. It's like when it's too hot in the room, you use air conditioner to generate the cool air. The cool air is not going to fight the hot air, but it's coming to embrace the hot air. And the room will be cooler and cooler. So this is exactly the same thing. Mindfulness come up, recognize anger, and embrace the anger. And the energy of mindfulness is penetrating into the zone of anger. It's like the lotus flowers in the morning. It still glows, but as the sun go up, and when the sunshine is strong enough, and the sunshine is not only going around the lotus flower, but as photons, it penetrates into the flower, into the sunflowers. And 1 hour after the lotus flower open. The same thing is true with our anger, our mindfulness. Our mindfulness, recognizing our anger, embracing our anger tenderly, And each particle of mindfulness will try to penetrate into the zone of anger. And our anger will have to open like a flower and change. When the mothers hear the baby crying, she stops doing what she is doing. She goes to the room of the baby. And the first thing she does is to pick up the baby and hold the baby tenderly. That is exactly what we should do when anger comes up. Anger is our baby. And mindfulness is the mother taking care of the baby. The mother does not know what is wrong with the baby yet. And yet, holding the baby with tenderness can already bring a relief. If you know how to hold your anger, you will suffer less. Even if you don't know what is the real cause of your anger yet. So if you hold your baby mindfully and then you find out a few minutes later what is wrong with the baby may be hungry, the baby may have a light fever, or something like that. And if you have the insight about the cause of the suffering, you can transform the situation easily. So the first thing that mindfulness does is to recognize anger. It does not fight, it recognizes anger. The second thing is it will embrace tenderly the energy of anger, and you get a relief. And mindfulness is a kind of energy that carries within herself the energy of concentration. When you are very aware, very mindful of something, you are concentrating yourself on that something. Suppose you are aware of the white flower, very mindful of it, and you are concentrated on it. You know that this is a flower. So with enough mindfulness and concentration, you can look deeply into the nature of what is there. In this case, your anger. And you find out the roots of your anger. And the roots of your anger may come from wrong perceptions. Our violence, our anger, our despair, our fear, they are born from the ground of wrong perceptions. We human beings, we are very often victims of our wrong perceptions. When you want to defend yourself against the attacker, your attacker, and if you have the vision, the insight, that your attacker is also a victim, and he is making other victims, that insight changes the whole situation. And you'll be able to protect yourself in such a way that you can protect him at the same time. This has to do very much with the war on terror. Because there are those who believe that they are victims of injustice and discrimination. They believe that the other people are trying to destroy them as a religion, as a way of life, as a civilization. They have got perceptions that are not very useful to them. And these wrong perceptions are the ground for anger, fear, despair, and the willingness to punish. Wrong perceptions are at the foundation of all these negative energies: fear, anger, despair, violence. There are terrorists that have died, that have killed and have died. There are terrorists who are still alive. They are going to die one day together with other people, their victims. But there are terrorists in the making. They are not terrorists today, but as they continue to get that kind of information, that kind of perceptions, they will become terrorists. Terrorists to be, there are many of them in our society. So the way to deal with terrorism is to help people to remove wrong perceptions. Because so many of us are getting wrong perceptions that fuel our anger, our fear, our despair, and our willingness to punish. Removing terrorism, you have to help remove wrong perceptions. You cannot use the bombs and the guns in order to destroy wrong perceptions. How can a bomb destroy a wrong perception? Only by the insight, by the compassion, by your understanding. You can talk to him, you can talk to her, and help him or her remove the wrong perceptions. It's my conviction that the more we kill terrorists, the more we create terrorists. The only way is to try to listen to them. To recognize, to identify their perceptions. And after that, using love and speech, helping them to correct their wrong perceptions. So that compassion, understanding can be there, and they will cease to be a terrorist. They will do, say things in order to help with the cause of peace and justice. And our political leaders, most of them have not been trained in the discipline of compassionate listening, love and speech. That is why they tend to use only the guns and the bombs to deal with this situation. There's so much anger in our society, so much despair. In France, where we have our practice center, every day about 34, 35 young French men and women commit suicide. It means every year about more than 12,000 young French men and women killing themselves because they are victims of their anger, their fear, their despair. And all these emotions come from their perceptions they got from reading, from listening, from viewing, even from conversation. We know that by the time our children finish elementary school, they have watched something like 100,000 acts of violence on television. They consume a lot of violence. We have allowed the seed of anger and violence in them to be watered every day. There are children in America who watch television 3 hours a day, or even more. In order for a person to be happy, we should allow the good seeds in him, like the seed of mindfulness, the seed of compassion, of non-discrimination, the seed of joy, love to be water. And the programs they watch on television, the things they read, the music they play, they hear, the conversation they listen to, may be highly toxic, full of violence and fear and anger. And we allow ourselves, and we have allowed our children to be intoxicated by these negative elements. And that is why the way out is to practice mindful consumption. Mindful consumption. We have to consume in such a way that we will stop bringing more violence, more fear, more craving into us. Because we have had enough of these negative energies in us. If we continue to consume more, and then how could we transform the amount of violence, of fear, of anger that are already in us? So stopping to consume more, and we have a chance to transform what is already inside of us. And we know that understanding and compassion are the only kind of energy that can neutralize violence and anger. Take, for instance, the example that we have begun with, that person who tried to defend himself. But the energy, habit energy in him is that every time he is confronted by a situation of an attack, automatically rage, anger come up. He's very capable of defending himself, but that rage, that anger will cause him to kill the other person, to at least to wound the other person. So now if you can help that man to train himself, and that he can earn the insight that the other person, the attacker, is also victim of his own wrong perceptions, violence, fear, anger. And suddenly compassion is born in you. And you are now defending yourself not with the energy of anger, but with the energy of compassion. You save both yourself and that person. A victory for both. And that is an expression used by the Buddha. You win a victory for both, you and the other person. And understanding, that is the insight. And understanding here just means understanding the suffering, the realization that the other person is also a victim. And for me, a terrorist is also a victim. That makes other victims, create other victims. The terrorist should be helped and not to be punished. The way of thinking is quite different. We have patterns of thinking. We have neural pathways. We used to travel in the past. When we are confronted by such a situation, we always think in that way. And the result is anger and punishment. Because the seed of anger, the seed of discrimination are in us. But fortunately, we do have the seed of compassion, insight, non-discrimination in us. And if we know how to make use of them, how to touch them, how to help them to manifest, so that we will have the insight, the understanding we need. We understand that the other person is also a victim, that he does not know how to handle his own suffering, and he is making other victims. Only that can change the whole thing. And when you are confronted by such a situation, if you can touch that insight, you do have that insight in you. Help that insight to manifest, and you concentrate on that. And then you will create a new neural pathways that will lead you to another kind of thinking, another way of thinking. And instead of killing him, you save him. You save yourself, and you save him. And that is not very complicated. If you are in mind, mindfulness will help you to see that the other person is also a victim that you should help instead of punishing. And then compassion is possible. And compassion will be a powerful source of action. And that is why the truth is that we are hardwired to compassion. We are hardwired to happiness. It is possible for us to be happy, to be compassionate. With a little bit of training, it will change our way of thinking. It will change also our brain, because our brain can change according to our way of thinking. It is always profitable if you live with a practicing community. Every member of the Sangha is trying to do the same. Try to practice right thinking, right speech, and right action. What is right thinking? Right thinking is thinking in the direction of non-discrimination, in the direction of compassion, understanding. And we know that we can produce a thought like that. Every one of us sitting in this room, in this hall, is capable of producing a thought of compassion, of understanding. We can see that the terrorist, that the other person is also a victim. And that person needs to be helped. That insight can be obtained by all of us. And when we have that insight, right thinking, compassionate thinking become very easy. And as soon as you are able to produce a thought of compassion, that thought of compassion will have an effect of healing right away on your body, on your mind. And will have a healing effect on the world right away. Just one thought of compassion, of understanding. And every one of us can produce many thoughts like that every day for our own healing and the healing of the world. That is called the practice of right thinking. Right thinking is possible when we have the insight about, we understand the suffering, our own suffering, and the suffering of the other person. Every one of us has suffering, and we should learn how to listen to our own suffering. Every nation has her own suffering, and we have to listen to the suffering of our own nation. And if we understand the suffering, we become compassionate, understanding. and that will neutralize our anger, our violence. So it's good to know that the seed of compassion is in us, the seed of understanding is in us, and we are all hardwired to compassion, to happiness. We need only to train our mind a little bit. And when the people who live in our family, in our community, they are trying to practice that, so we get the support. We can remind each other to touch the seed of compassion, understanding, non-discrimination every day. And as these seeds grow, we become happier. With compassion, we are protected. Compassion allowed us to relate to other human beings. Without compassion, we are utterly alone. And cultivating compassion, we cultivate happiness. And compassion cannot be there without understanding. Understanding, first of all, is understanding of the suffering. Your own suffering and the suffering of the other person. Suffering, dukkha, is considered to be a noble truth in the Buddhist tradition. And suffering plays some role in making happiness. It's like the mud and the lotus. Without the mud, you cannot grow lotus. Without suffering, you cannot make happiness. Because happiness is made of understanding and love. It's not made of money or fame or power, no. Because there are plenty of people who have power, fame, wealth, but they suffer very deeply. But those of us who have plenty of understanding and compassion, we are happy even if we don't have a lot of money. But in order to have understanding and compassion, you should understand suffering. You cannot grow lotus flower on marble. You have to grow them on the mud. Those of us who have learned from our own suffering have been able to cultivate enough compassion and understanding. Understanding here means understanding suffering. If you have not suffered at all, it means you don't have understanding. It is by understanding suffering that you become understanding and compassionate. So there is something I call the goodness of suffering. Each of us needs a certain dose of suffering in order to cultivate understanding and compassion. Those of us who do not know what is suffering do not have compassion. It is because we understand what is suffering, that is why we can be compassionate. Love is not possible without understanding of suffering. So if you don't understand her suffering, how can you love her and make her happy? If you don't know his suffering, his difficulties, how can you help him to be happy? So understanding the suffering of someone is the foundation of the love you can offer that someone. And that is why to love, to be compassionate, for everyone is possible, including the terrorists. They need love. They need understanding. And you can provide them with understanding and love. It's not by killing them that you can help them. So, to practice understanding and loving kindness and compassion, we need a sangha. We need a group of people that are motivated by the same desire to train our mind, to allow the seeds of happiness, of compassion, of understanding to be watered several times a day. When you are in a loving relationship with someone, you may like to say, darling, you know that I have a seed of sorrow and fear and anger in me. If you really care for me, please don't water these seeds. Because if you did, I will suffer. And if I suffer, I surely make you suffer. So darling, please refrain from watering the seeds of anger, fear, jealousy, despair in me. If you love me, please water the seed of compassion, love and kindness, joy, non-discrimination in me. I be happy, and I think that you profit from my happiness. And darling, I promise the same. From now on, I will refrain from watering the negative seeds in you. I promise to water every day the lovely seed of joy, forgiveness, compassion, understanding in you. So you can sign a kind of love treaty or peace treaty with the other person. In Plum Village, the community where we live and practice in France, many couple, husband and wife, father and son, mother and daughter, come and sign a peace treaty, the love treaty, in the presence of the Sangha, and bring them home to practice. And that is the practice of selective watering of the seeds. You water only the good seeds. You don't water the bad seeds. And one aspect of the practice is mindful consumption. You don't consume what can water the negative seed in you, the seed of violence, the seed of fear, anger, and craving. When you love someone, the most precious thing you can offer him or her is your fresh, loving presence. It's not money. It is your loving, fresh, pleasant presence. And that you can obtain with the practice of mindfulness. You practice mindful breathing and release all tension on your face. Breathing in, I'm aware of the tension in my face. Breathing out, I smile. And you look much better after 1 minute of practice. and you release your worry. You go back to the present moment and you touch the wonders of life in the present moment. And then you go to your beloved one and you say, darling, you know something? I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I'm there for you. Because the best gift you can make to your beloved one is your presence. If you are not there, you cannot love. My definition of love is to be there for the person you love. How can you love if you are not there? You are so busy. You always think of the stock market. You only think of your projects, the future, the past. You are not there for your beloved one. So the real act of love is to be there, fully present, fresh, smiling. So practicing mindful breathing, mindful walking, bringing your mind back to your body, and you become available in the here and the now. And that is the best kind of present you can make to your beloved one. Darling, I'm really here for you. That is a mantra. If you have enough mindfulness and concentration, and if you pronounce that mantra, you change the whole situation. Happiness will be there right away for you, for him, for her. And then when you are truly there, you can do something more. You can acknowledge the presence of your beloved one. Because to be loved means to be recognized as existing. And you can use the second mantra, darling, I know you are there, alive. I'm so happy. And with the energy of mindfulness, you recognize her, you recognize him as existing, as something very precious to your life. That is the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness helps you to be truly there for yourself. Mindfulness helps you to recognize the wonders of life that are available in the here and the now. And your beloved one is part of the wonders of life. So if she is embraced by the energy of mindfulness, your energy of mindfulness, she will bloom like a flower. And the second mantra is easy as the first one. And tonight you can practice it. Darling, I know you are there, alive. I'm so happy. Even if the other person is not physically there, you can still practice. Use your telephone. Send an email, send a message, and you see that it's always effective if you are truly mindful and concentrated. And we know that the practice of mindfulness is very pleasant. You don't have to suffer practicing meditation. When you practice mindful breathing, you just allow yourself to be aware of your in-breath. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. You allow yourself to breathe in naturally. You don't have to force you to breathe in. You are breathing in and out all the time. So allow yourself to breathe normally. Just pay attention to your in-breath. You don't have to struggle. You don't have to force yourself to breathe in because you are breathing in anyway. And that is called mindful breathing. And mindful breathing can bring wonders. When you breathe in and you are aware that you are breathing in, suddenly you are aware that you are alive. Breathing in, I know I am alive. Because someone who is not breathing cannot be described as alive. Breathing in, I know I am alive. And to be alive is a miracle. It's the greatest of all miracles. And we have to rejoice of that fact. Breathing in, I know I am alive. That is a miracle. Breathing out, I smile to life. And happiness can come right away. Breathing in, I'm aware of my eyes. Breathing out, I smile to my eyes. My eyes are still in good conditions. There is a paradise of forms and colors available in the present moment. I need only to open my eyes in order to enter the paradise of forms and colors. There are those who have lost their eyesight. They cannot see anything anymore. And the deepest wish is to be able to see things again. And because we have eyes in good situation, in good conditions, the paradise of colors and form is still available. And when I bring my mindfulness to my eyes, I recognize that there again is another condition of happiness. Eyes in good condition. And you need to open your eyes in order to be happy. Why do you have to run into the future and look for happiness? And when you bring mindfulness to recognize your heart, you practice breathing in, I'm aware of my heart. I'm breathing out, I smile to my heart. You are using the energy of mindfulness in order to embrace your heart with tenderness. Your heart is working hard day and night to serve your well-being. You can spend 5 hours, 6 hours sleeping, but your heart works non-stop. And your well-being depends on your heart. And yet sometimes you are not very kind to your own heart. You smoke, you drink alcohol, you stay up late, you have so much worries and fear. You have given your heart a hard time. And when you come back to your heart and embrace your heart with mindfulness, suddenly you become aware of that. And you may be motivated by changing your way of life in order to be kinder to your heart. And that is a love directed to your heart. And in training our mind, we recognize different parts of our body. We can go from the hair on our head and to the little toes in our feet. And we can scan the whole body with the energy of the ray of mindfulness. And we learn to embrace every part of our body tenderly with a smile. And when we come to a part of the body that is ailing, we stay longer. We embrace that part longer. We smile to that part, and it will help the healing to take place more quickly. Of course, we can continue with our medication, but with the knowledge of how to use the mindfulness in order to relax our body and embrace our body in mindfulness, we can accelerate the process of healing. When we sit relaxedly like this, when we practice mindful breathing and allow our body to release the tension, suddenly we notice that the heart rate is reduced. There is more peace. Our in-breath and out-breath become more peaceful. The heart rate is reduced. And of course, the system of defense is become stronger. And that will help very much with the process of healing. With a week of practice, we can transform our situation. First of all, we have to believe in ourselves. Although there is the seed of violence, fear, anger, and despair in us, we do have the seed of compassion, non-discrimination, joy, loving kindness, and hope in us. We have to got that kind of belief, that kind of conviction. We do have these capacities. Only we should arrange so that these wholesome seeds in us have a chance to be watered, to be touched every day. We have to talk to the people around us and ask for their help. If you care for me, if you really love me, please help water these wonderful seeds in me. And that is why to choose a good environment, to make friends among those who know the practice is very important. To build a sangha is very important. And we know that with the practice, we can recognize our habit energy. We can transform these habit energies, and we can also create new wonderful habit energies. The habit energies of looking deeply, of bringing peace and joy into our body and into our mind. The bell of mindfulness is what we practice in Plum Village, in every center. When you hear the sound of the bell, you stop thinking, you stop talking, you stop doing things, you just bring your attention to your in-breath, and you breathe in mindfully, and you enjoy your in-breath, knowing that you are alive, and you smile. You breathe in and breathe out. In every center we have created, people always practice the bell of mindfulness. When you hear the bell of mindfulness, you stop thinking, talking, doing things. You just go home to yourself, relax yourself, enjoy breathing in and out. Allow peace to manifest in yourself. And at least 3 times, when you hear 3 sounds of the bell, you have chance to practice 9 in-breath and 9 out-breath. And in that moment, your body is totally relaxed and the healing takes place. And you can prolong, you can extend that time as much as you want. In the beginning, you might not be comfortable with the bell of mindfulness. You are saying something very exciting, you hear the bell and you have to stop. You don't like it. But slowly you realize how good it is to be able to stop. And after a few days, only a few days, it becomes a habit. And when you hear the bell, you don't have to make any effort. You naturally stop thinking, talking, and enjoy breathing in and out. There are times when we have 5,000 people on the campus, and when there is a sound of the bell, the sound of the bell, all the 5,000 people stop and enjoy breathing in and out. And the collective energy of peace is wonderful. It penetrates into everyone, and it is for our transformation and healing. So it's very good to create a sangha, a group of people. And when we listen to the bell together, when we breathe together, when we walk mindfully together, we create that wonderful collective energy of peace, of relaxation that is very healing, very nourishing. And all these are not hard to do. In fact, they are very pleasant things to do. If you have one or two questions to ask, there will be enough time for us to do that. Thank you.
The energy within you, and also understand the energy within the guy who is going to attack you. My question is related to what is happening between Tibet and China today. What are your suggestions to resolve an issue of this magnitude? Thank you.
We spoke a lot about somebody is going to attack us, and so how can we apply this to the situation between China and Tibet today?
While I was visiting and giving retreats of mindfulness in Italy earlier this year, I was interviewed by the Italian press about this issue. I proposed that the European Union send a delegation to China, to Tibet, to inquire about the suffering of the Tibetan people and the Chinese people, because there are Chinese people who suffer also because of that issue. And come back and report to Europe about the truth, because we need to understand what is really going on. I also proposed that China allowed the Dalai Lama to go home in order to teach his people the way I was allowed to go back to Vietnam after 40 years of exile. And I thought that if the Dalai Lama is allowed to go home just to teach Buddhism, he can already make many people happy. And I also said that there was one time when Vietnam was under Chinese rule for nearly 1,000 years. But finally, we could regain our independence. So our Tibetan friends should not be discouraged. If they know how to preserve their culture, if they know how to stick to their cultural heritage, and share it with other people, including the Chinese, there will be a chance when they can regain their independence like Vietnam. I think our world has become globalized, and the problem of Tibet is no longer for the Tibetan alone. We are responsible. We are co-responsible for it also. So each of us should be able to understand and to be doing something in order to help the people of Tibet to preserve their culture, their civilization, their nation, their identity. And this is not only true with Tibet, but with many other areas in the world also. What I want to say is that we are all co-responsible for what is happening in any situation in the world. And if we are so busy in our daily life, we cannot help. We have no chance to help our brothers and our sisters. So the most basic thing is we should try to change our way of life so that we have more time to take care of ourselves and to take care of the people we love. In the present situation, most of us are too busy. We don't have the time to live, to love, to take care. So that question about Tibet has to do a lot with this. Thank you.
Namaste, my name is Abhinav. I'm one of the few privileged people to practice under Shantam, and I've been practicing this for quite some time now. My question was, is there something called as karma? Specifically speaking, if we consider the recent events that have folded, the bombing in India, many of the innocent people were killed. I agree that if a person is suffering, he will spread suffering around him. But why is it that the people who are nowhere related should suffer? Is there something as karma which brought them there so that they have to suffer, or what?
I understand very briefly his teaching about if we suffer, we make others suffer. But how can we view karma? In the current situation in India, there are bombings taking place where innocent people are being killed. So in the case of Buddhism, what is the role of karma individually?
We have spoken about mindful consumption. I think the practice of mindful consumption will allow us to get out of the difficult situation, because our society is consuming a lot of anger and violence and fear every day. And when we look deeply into the situation, we see that the roots of that violence, that fear, that despair, it's very important to practice to protect ourselves, our family, our community, our nation from being invaded by the energy of fear, anger, discrimination, and despair. And one of the ways is to stop consuming these energies. When you read an article, you consume. When you watch a television program, you consume. When you have a conversation, you consume, because everything can contain despair and anger and violence. The practice of listening deeply with compassion can be very helpful. Those who have the wrong informations, the wrong perceptions that have given them a lot of anger and fear and violence, we should try to help them to understand, to remove their wrong perceptions. We should try to listen to them with compassion. There are those in society who feel that they are victims of social discrimination. They believe that they are victims of social injustice. And they have tried to draw the attention of other people to their situation. They have tried many ways, but nobody has listened to them. Nobody has tried to do something in order to show that people are aware of that, and people are trying to do something for it. And finally, they have to resort to violence. So one of the practices that can be used is that you can invite people who feel that they are victims of discrimination and injustice to come. And we organize sessions of deep listening, compassionate listening, so that they have a chance to speak out, to empty their heart. Because so far, they feel that no one has listened to them. And violence, killing, using the bomb is maybe the last thing they have recourse to. In the country, there are those who have a compassionate heart, who have the capacity of listening with compassion. We have to invite them over and help us to sit down and listen. If the National Assembly, if the government can organize such sessions of deep listening, compassionate listening, and guarantee that there will be people, known, famous or not famous, capable of listening, to come and listen to them, and they can say everything in their heart. And that we can truly practice, have the time to practice listening to the suffering of these people, also of the nation. And we can even televise these sessions of compassionate listening to the whole population, for the whole population to follow and to listen. I have the conviction that if we organize sessions of deep listening like that for a few weeks, and the level of violence, of anger in the country will go down. We need people who are capable to listen with compassion. Most of us are so busy, including political leaders, business leaders. We are thinking we do not have even the time to listen to our own suffering. We are trying to cover up our suffering. How can we listen to the suffering of other people? That is the real situation. And if we wake up to that situation, we see that listening is a very important practice. If the father is not capable of listening to his son and understand the suffering of his son, he cannot love his son and make his son happy. The same thing is true with the husband, the wife, the daughter. If you cannot listen to the person you love, you don't understand, and the other person doesn't have the feeling that you love him or you love her. So arrange so that we have the time to listen to our own suffering, the suffering of our nation is very important. In the Buddhist tradition, we speak of one person who is very good in listening with compassion. That is the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. Just by listening, you can help them to suffer less right away. We have psychotherapists in our society, and their main job is to listen. But the quality of listening is a problem, because if the therapists suffer very much and do not understand their own suffering, how can they listen and understand the suffering of their patients? So the practice of Avalokiteshvara is very important. You should learn to listen to your own suffering. You understand your suffering. And then you will have the capacity of listening to the other person. And listening like that for 1 hour, you bring already a lot of relief. Do you think that our political leaders can do that? They are willing to do that? I believe that there are deeply spiritual people. There are those of us who have the time, who have the capacity of sitting down and listen. They may not be very well known, but they are there. We have to identify them, ask them to come and help us. Listening to the suffering of the nation, that is a very urgent practice. And with that deep listening, I believe that the suffering will go down, the violence, the anger will go down. And in the context of our family, we should have the time to listen to other members of the family. Everyone has to do that. And as we are able to do that, we bring relief into our family, and we can help our government to do so. Because the Congress, the Parliament that we elect has the duty to listen to the suffering of the people. Do you think that the people we have elected have the time to listen to our suffering? You would not vote for the person who does not have the capacity to listen to you, do you? And that is why listening is a very deep practice. Just by listening alone, you can help people to suffer much less already.
Venerable Master, on behalf of Sector 15A, our small community, on behalf of Club 15A, and if I may say so, on behalf of all sentient beings, I thank the Venerable Master and all other masters who keep the Buddha Dharma alive. I'm grateful.
We should also thank the Sports and Cultural Club, who, as soon as we mentioned this, the opportunity of Thai Sangha coming, took it up. So especially Sanjeev Sareen, Meenakshi Goyal, Mr. Pathak, who is not here, but Mr. Badla, and of course Mandeep, who is the Dhamma brother. For me, it's been very nice. In this room is both my biological loving father and my spiritual father. And bringing Thumb Village, my spiritual home, to my own home in Sector 15A is very nice. So I hope that we can bring that energy and bring it into Sector 15A and how these ripples will go out. So let's practice together in the community. And I should also say that there are some little booklets outside and things which you want to take, you can take or buy. Even t-shirts which say something like mindfulness is really being truly present. And thanks so much, it's been very nice. We have all sorts of people here, artists, scholars, journalists, politicians, householders, young and old. So, and I've seen this very this great attentiveness in everyone. So thank you so much for coming. And we also have this 5-day retreat. Actually, the registration is closed for some reason. It's been reopened for some reason because people were asking. So we can register now at the end of this talk if you want to. This is the theme we've been starting at 15th to 19th, 3 evenings and a weekend. You want to imbibe the practice of mindfulness in a slightly deeper way in yourself and your family. And in the weekend, we also have a program for children. So please